Hey, what's going on YouTube? So today we're taking a step out of the garage and we're going to take a look at something else that's super expensive, that takes up a lot of my time, that is super badass in my opinion. I love this thing. So this is my first computer that I've ever built. It's my personal rig, and I use this for my flight training. So I do all my online schooling, my ground school, I do that all on here, and then I do flight simming, so I run X-Plane on here. So this specific video, I want to talk about my build in relation directly to X-Plane, because when I was going and trying to do my own research to find out, what kind of stuff should I run, or what kind of hardware should I buy for X-Plane, I really couldn't find too many videos on that subject matter. So today I'm going to show you my build, my rig, why I have the decisions for some of the stuff that's in here, why I made some of those decisions, and then cost to break down, and then show you how you can build something like this and slowly upgrade it over time, and you can have a completely killer system. So my ultimate goal is to have an FAA inspector come out and check out my rig, and then hopefully certify it so that I can log some simulator hours from home. That was primarily why, the big reason why I dropped so much money on this. So this has been upgraded over time. I'm not going to get super into the details of what I had, but I'm more so going to get into what I have now, so that you can kind of go make your own decisions based on what you want to do. Like if you want to do this for fun, I wouldn't necessarily go with some of the hardware in here, but if you want to do this for some serious training, then you might want to go with some upgraded hardware compared to what I have in here. So let's get into it. This build, I would say, is probably about a $1,500 to $2,000 build. I did chase aesthetics a little bit here, personally, so keep that in mind. I didn't have a problem spending a little bit extra just to make this thing look as cool as possible. And there's a few small areas where I sacrificed a little bit of performance doing that, but for what I'm running X-Plane on, I'm running on a single 1080p panel, so I don't, I didn't really need anything like monstrously crazy. The biggest, most expensive component that I really wanted to focus on was the graphics card, because in X-Plane, it's for processing power. It's primarily running on it's using. I can't talk. It's utilizing single core threaded performance, so you don't really need like 100 million core CPU at 1600 gigahertz, megahertz, bibahertz, whatever, so we're rocking the MSI B360 Gaming Arctic. Got this motherboard a year ago. This is the original motherboard that I had with the system, and that's, I think at this point, like the only original component aside from my storage drive. We had originally 16 gigabytes of RAM, upgraded to 32. The B360 chipsets they cap out at 2666. You can't go faster than that, so that's the frequency I'm running. 32 gigs so that I can run my orthos and payware and freeware and all kinds of stuff, and it handles it no problem. If you're just starting out, I would 100% say 16 gigabytes of RAM is the absolute minimum that I would get. I would get 2 8 gigs and run dual channel. The processor is an i5 9600K F, because I didn't need I had to run discrete graphics anyways, so integrated graphics was useless, so I saved $10 there. Again, with the B360, you can't really overclock, so I'm relying just purely on Intel's Turbo Boost. This chip, if I wanted to overclock it, and I had a motherboard that could, I've heard people hitting 5 gigahertz on it. I consistently run at 4.3, and every so often it'll jump up to 4.4. In X-Plane, with this CPU, I'm able to run my world objects at completely maxed out. I don't run reflections on water or anything like that, or shadows, which everyone will tell you to turn off anyways. So for me, maxing out the sliders on that I still get rock solid performance. which I'll talk about frame rates in a little bit after we transition to this. This is the Gigabyte RTX 2070 Super Gaming OC, or Gaming 3 OC White Edition. So it's got it's the 3-fan cooler design. It's just white. This thing out of the box, without even overclocking it, was hitting 2 gigahertz. Right now I've got a 130 megahertz overclock on the core clock and 1000 megahertz on the memory clock. So mid-game, after a few hours in the sim, this will jump up from 121.45 at the load screens, and after everything is kind of heat soaked, it'll consistently be at 2080. So frame rate wise, I should also mention that this has 8 gigs of VRAM. So frame rate wise, with those big components, I'm getting consistently, I don't dip below 35, I think is like my minimum ones on heavy airports. So for example, like Payware, Sky Harbor, or San Diego, Dallas, New Orleans, no, not Dallas, excuse me, Houston, so George Bush International, which is a monster freaking airport. I am running, like I said, orthos on this too, as well as, you know, a bunch of freeware and payware, so aircraft liveries, different cities, stuff like that. San Diego, for example, that's a pretty taxing system. So San Diego, I've got the payware airport along with orthos. Same thing with Phoenix, because those are primarily the big flights that I like to do. But yeah, so frame rate rise with those specific components, I usually don't see below 37 or 38 in a super heavy traffic area. And if I'm flying at night in the middle of nowhere at 11,000 feet, I can see as high as up to 120 FPS. So it just kind of depends on where I'm at and what time of day I'm flying, what are the weather conditions, clouds and stuff like that. Originally I had a 1660 Ti, which was, I love that card so much, but just for what I wanted to do and the level that I wanted to push this thing up to, I would definitely recommend at least a 2060. Get something with, or 2060 Super. Get something with 8 gigs of VRAM. I would say minimum 8 gigs. Because even with a 6 gig card, as dope as that card was, I was still getting choppiness every now and then, and a little bit of stuttering. The case, a lot of people don't like. It's the Corsair IQ465X. It's basically what my original case was, which was the Spec 06, but just with this glass front panel on it. Power supply is the RM750 from Corsair, and for storage we're running 2 SSDs, a 500 gig WD, which has my OS on it and all the lighting software and everything like that, and a 250 gig 870 Evo that's running the simulator and all my scenery and airplanes and stuff like that. So I think it's close to like 1 terabyte of storage. It's like 750 gigs, which again, I don't really game. I'm not loading a ton of games on there. So for what I'm specifically doing, this totally works out for me. For you, if you want to do this for fun, or if you want to run a bunch of games, if you're a gamer, I would definitely go with at least 1 terabyte, just to kind of get you going, and then maybe get like another 500 gig just to run your OS and keep that 1 terabyte later on just for your games and stuff like that. So no spinning drives in this system. It's pretty loud, but I have a pretty aggressive fan curve on it. It is liquid cooled with the H100i Platinum, again in white. I mean, it's just a cool looking build. I love this thing so much. I would eventually like to upgrade the fans to all white ones, but I mean, that's, at this point I'm done upgrading all the hardware in my computer. So I guess we should get into pricing. So let's break it down by price now. The processor, i5-9600K, F was $210 from B&H. The 2070 Super here from Gigabyte was $580 from Newegg after shipping and everything like that. I got lucky with one of my drives. I didn't have to buy one. We had one laying around. The main drive that I use for the system, the 500 gig WD drive, was $60. So RAM was about $90 for each kit. So figure 180 for 32 gigs. The motherboard was $109 after rebate. That was big part of the reason too I went with this motherboard. Again, I didn't really care about overclocking. I know I'm losing a little bit of ability to overclock, so there's a lot more potential for that CPU, but for what I'm doing, doesn't really bother me too much. So that was honestly a steal. I didn't really need a $200 or $150 motherboard, so $109 for that. So you're looking at 5.8 to 1,000. So with this build, I would say, for the computer itself, the chassis with the fans, with all the lighting that I have in here, is probably about a $1,500 build. If I included like my peripherals and my panel, then it would probably shoot up closer to $2,000 total. And again, so what I did is I didn't drop $2,000 all at once. I got what I needed to get it running, and slowly over time I just kind of upgraded things here and there. So the first thing I did was added more RAM. The second thing was I went with a water cooler, just because I hated the Intel stock cooler, and I wanted to do, I always wanted an AIO. I just thought that was the coolest thing, and not worry about like custom water cooling. And plus it's white, so I had to get that. Temps, man, my processor under full load in the sim after 5 hours, the max temp that I'll see it hit is 54C, and it usually will hang out in the mid 40s, just kind of bounce anywhere from 45 to 50, 51, back down to 45. And same thing with the 2070 here. Even overclocked, this thing usually after about 5 hours is still, it sits at about 54C max, like max temp, everything completely maxed out. Sliders like virtually maxed out. In fact, the only slider that I don't have maxed out on this is the anti-aliasing slider on X-Plane. So everything else is pretty much full blast. I'm not running shadows, I'm not running reflections on water, and I get frame rate ballpark, like I said, anywhere from 40 to 50 in super high, like densely populated city areas with orthos, and if I'm flying at night, I'll get up to like 120 FPS. So this is my build for X-Plane. This is what I went with, and those are some of the choices that I kind of made. So the money that I saved from the motherboard, I put towards the graphics card. So just different trade-offs like that. And once all that stuff was kind of taken care of, then I had a little bit of fun with getting a nicer case and some good fans and all that kind of fun stuff. So there's my rig, guys. That's what I use it for. And if you're looking to build a rig for X-Plane, I hope this helps. So thanks for watching.